Good morning. This is Dante Ang of the Manila Times. Welcome to the Manila Times Roundtable. We're fortunate to have today the former Secretary of Defense, Gilberto Teodoro. Of course, Mr. Teodoro was not only Secretary of Defense, he was a member of Congress from 1998 to 2007. He represented the 1st District of Tarlac. He was also the standard bearer of the Lakas NUCD in 2010. Of course, you know that from that election, Noynoy Aquino won. Since then, Mr. Teodoro has fallen off the political radar, but we're glad to see he is back now. Good morning, Secretary Gilberto Teodoro, or may I call you Gibo?
Yeah, of course. Good morning to our Manila Times guru, Dante Ang II. Good morning, everyone, and to the members of the panel. Pleasant Tuesday, and hopefully a safe one for all of us.
Secretary, first, thank you for giving us time to do this. I should ask you about your political plans. You've been making appearances lately, and of course, you announced on your Facebook page that you are willing to be the vice presidential running mate of Sara Duterte if she runs. Perhaps we can start there and give us an update on what are your plans, and maybe if you've heard of what are Mayor Sara's plans, if there are any developments there.
I haven't heard of any one's plans except the recent announcements of some other candidates. Because I strictly think that at this point, at this time in with the situation in the country, it is impolitic, really, to mention one's plans. So to go back to the question, I had said that I'm willing to be her vice president should she decide, because I feel that I can contribute much on the executive branch of government, giving policies and ideas. Given my, I didn't fall out of life after 2010. I joined the private sector and I learned a lot about institutionalization of systems, processes, adaptability, disruptive technologies, which probably can be very helpful with our government, especially with a government with a structure which is 30 years old and which is really not one which gives the government flexibility to adapt to changed circumstances. And when I say changed circumstances, there has been a fundamental change since, let's put it January of 2019, the start. And the world would never be the same again, as we saw in Afghanistan the other day.
So I was watching your interview with Karen Davila, and the interview where you had made an appearance with your wife, former Congresswoman Nikki. And she was saying that you needed a break from politics, and are we, maybe give us a glimpse of what Gibo 2.0 looks like now that you're back in the
Gibo 2.0 probably is a more mature one, a humbler one, a more patient one, hopefully, and one that has seen both the governmental side and on the regulatory side. And I'd like to put into that, although I have been largely on the private side, my public interest work with government on a consultancy basis, like the Philippine Air Force Multi-Sectoral Governance Council, has continued. My wife is special envoy to UNICEF. Yeah, and child welfare issues are really at the forefront of her advocacies, particularly at this time. Although it's really difficult to maneuver. So Gibo 2.0.
Yeah, you mentioned that that things are so different, and I think from that interview, you're saying even that some billionaires were having trouble getting hospital beds because of COVID.
I think we know that. We know who that was. And this is not only affecting our society, but the world at large. And the hard part of this is the unpredictability of the whole thing. Now we have the first case of Lambda, and we don't know how far the Delta variant is going to spread. Nobody really knows, given our density, our population density, and the well-nigh impossibility really of keeping the basic health and sanitation practices that we need. Because with Delta, we know that even contact of a certain distance is not necessary. It's further contact. But then again, to go back to the question, Gibo 2.0 would have had perhaps the experience of both being on the regulating side and the regulated side. And I have a much broader insight now into both the private sector, which is really is an important engine of growth, no? And perhaps also because we study also disruptive technologies, we study the changing attitudes and the impatience of the youth, which sometimes is an asset, sometimes is a liability, which needs to be dealt with because of connectivity. It breeds demand for instant results. And sometimes in areas like diplomacy, this is not possible. So I'm probably a more mature, more well-rounded person at this time, and I'm not one to make promises. And what I really feel that election should, or any political exercise or any public exercise, not be reduced to one-liners, because we're dealing with a complex system. A country is a complex system and a complex mechanism. The COVID situation is a complex phenomenon of which everything is not really understood. So to reduce it to one-liners, except for commands like stay at home or like have yourself vaccinated, those things we can reduce to minima. But the rest, it's hard because reducing things to one-liners raises up expectations to things that may not be delivered, causing failed expectations and apathy or indifference or cynicism, which we don't really need right now.
That's interesting. But of course, with the political season now starting, people are prone to make those sound bites. But as you said, the issues are complex. So what should we be looking for in leaders in the 2022 elections? I mean, regardless of position, right? Because it's really, as you said, a complex problem.
Of course, the first one is a leader who the public trusts. I think even though you have the best leader capability-wise in the world, the public really won't believe in that person or cannot understand the lingo, then it's useless. Number one is trust. Number two is competence. Because of the need for one-liners, sometimes people who are competent have to sell themselves as men of the public, and some people cannot pull it off. Okay. The second is competence, and third is the humility to listen, actually, and the humility to build a bridge among really contending forces, not only here but nationwide. But having said that, that what are we looking in with leaders, and having laid the premise that we are dealing with a complex phenomenon now, which is a country, a complex system rather, not a phenomenon, which is a country facing complex phenomena in our economy, in our health, in our education system. It's also probably good for the media to up the ante a little and do the social role to educate our people with the vagaries of conflicting choices. I know people won't have time to do that, but maybe the young ones right now who are forced not to go out of the house, they may find the motivation, particularly if their teachers are motivated, to nuance these conflicting realities that come into this to this complex system like a country.
Well, let me ask you about about the situation today, and draw from your experience when you were in government, and as you said, the last 10 years when you when you were in the private sector. Could we be doing better? I mean, what's missing now? Do you think, from your perspective?
Well, really, no. What we could have done better with was, if you ask June Palafox, was post-liberation, better zoning, better urban
Okay.
planning, and better spoke and hub systems.
Okay.
Because, I mean, the devolution, you really need devolution of basic services to local government units. But some really don't have the capacity. So you have to create mega centers region-wide, because this is an not even region-wide, but functional area-wide throughout the country, because this is an archipelago, which can dispense with actually a modicum of basic services. And for example, even planning alone, urban planning, you see all these skyscrapers and no more flat land anywhere. So how can you build temporary isolation facilities which need flat land?
There's no space.
Yeah, there's no space. So to me, that was the start of a downhill. We could have done better in zonal planning. Secondly, we could have done better, and this is the most important thing that I think the Philippines needs to regain its competence, is to build the bureaucracy on both the national and the local level.
Okay.
There was a time, the bureaucracy is your spinal cord. No matter what, sometimes, of course, politicians change, policies change, but the bureaucracy brings in that filter in order to give learned and experienced judgment, as to whether or not a policy will work. And they will execute the policy, actually, because they're the bureaucrats. Okay, there was a time, I believe, that especially with the products of our public school system, where government even paid higher than the private sector. And so our bureaucracy was really competitive. Then our bureaucracy wasn't paid much attention to anymore, as much as our elected political leaders. It came also with the democratic space that we gained after 1986. However, we really need to build up the bureaucracy and build expertise and spend for it. We need to build up our research and development capabilities. Our educational institutions should focus more on R&D also, and publications. I was this exercise too in public exposure has been a continuous learning experience for me. One radio announcer told me, if you have K-12, which means to say you're a junior college graduate after 12, right? Why do you still have a 4-year college? Shouldn't it be 3 years like in other countries? There's some disconnect in there. So it's not only the design of the educational system we need to improve, but the content of our educational system and the motivation of the mentors, the teachers. Our basic education teachers are key to motivating our students. Not only are they teachers or imparters of knowledge or guides to the proper search for knowledge, the method of learning, but they're secondary parents too, role models. And these are the points, the strong points of society: the bureaucracy, the educational system, of course, our healthcare workers and our healthcare system. These are things that we need really to build on. Thirdly, I think two more things I learned. There's no system really of caring for elderly people on a national basis unless they are pensioners from some pension system. But if not, they are solely the responsibility of their children. If they do have children, if not, then they are, just left to dole outs from maybe charitable institutions and the like. We need to have that safety net for the vulnerable in our society, to include children and elderly. That's a balance. We need to have a balance of aggressive infrastructure, digital infrastructure, physical infrastructure and learning, the bureaucracy, the educational system, while at the same time caring for the most vulnerable in our society.
It's all very interesting, and I think a lot of these issues, I think, make people, wonder, where have you been? But there was an expectation in 2010 or 2016 that you may be joining the Duterte government, and there was talk that you may become defense secretary, and then that didn't pan out. What happened? Was that fake news, or was something else happened?
No. I really wanted to, but my personal situation did not allow. I just took back caring for my family and my mother, my widowed mother at the time, and she didn't want also me to join government. But what people will ask, what changed? What changed is after the pandemic, it's like war.
Yeah,
this is like war. I mean, everybody that can help, and government, no matter what people say, private sector is an important part. They can play their role. They can ease the burden of government. But government is the key driver of if we find a way. Because right now, everybody's just coping and hoping for a vaccine. So, but we know vaccinations really work, and the speed of vaccinations are key really to keeping more people safe and less variants coming out. But that changed after the pandemic. It's a war against an unseen enemy, and I think it changed the lives of everybody. Nobody was exempt from it.
Nobody was spared.
Yeah, and so people who ask me why just now, why not is my answer. Why not?
Right.
When I can help.
Right. So you're saying all hands on deck, right? So for Gibo Teodoro, what are you looking at? Are you looking at elected office? Are you looking at helping those who will run? Or
For me, elected office is the best. I've given my role. I'm not that ambitious. I would like to help a leader, craft policy. And the best way is to be a vice president, because like you, Klink, you're in a corporation. You have such a thing as a phenomenon as independent directors, where you're inside, but you're not really inside, looking from a different perspective and giving a different viewpoint. And secondly, you also can be a backstop if that is necessary, because there are so many duties to do at this time, so many concerns where the work must be divided. At the same time, if you're the head of a line ministry or something else, you'll be so inundated with work that you won't be able to think.
That's true.
Now,
So,
on the legislative side, I've been there.
okay.
I've done that, and
Mhm.
it's different on the executive side. But nonetheless, whatever happens, whatever evolves, I have said that I will continue to advocate those. I didn't come into this without people telling me you should do this.
Mhm.
And what will happen in the future will be also a process of consultation with them.
All right. So, why I was wondering, people are wondering, why did you uh, pick out Mayor Sara? I mean, the nation doesn't know her except for being mayor of Davao City and the daughter of the president. But apparently, from watching the other interviews that I saw, that your family and her family know each other. So,
No,
how
actually, I knew her dad
okay,
in 1990.
okay,
I was working for Attorney Estelito Mendoza, and we handled some cases that were filed, politically motivated cases, I must say, that were
okay,
filed against
okay,
the father at the time in order to persuade the father to join one political party or another. And as you know, I was identified with the then NPC
right,
as well as Estelito Mendoza. And from then on, we have known each other since then. Now,
yeah,
with Mayor Sara, mutual supporters of ours brought us together
okay,
and made us talk, and I got a sense of her as a person, as a leader, and the sense of running a complex community like Davao, which is the center of commerce of southeastern Mindanao, where there are big businesses in there. It's a commercial complex, and it also caters to a lot of constituencies outside their area, of which they cannot close up to. And they know very well also the health situation there. So I saw that she was very humble and very easy to talk to. So it was a function of mutual supporters bringing us together. Yeah.
right. And I was gonna say that you know her better than most Filipinos, and I was just wondering what went into the thought process of you making a statement that you would be willing to back her as her VP. Um, does she fall into that to those ideas that you mentioned earlier about the need to strengthen the bureaucracy, the concerns with education? I mean, is it because that you guys have alignment in political
I feel so.
thinking?
I feel so because there have been no in-depth talks. But with what I've
Okay,
seen, I went to one school in Davao
okay,
to have the second vaccination. The schools were handling them because there are almost 75 registered nurses who are also licensed teachers in Davao. And so that's the premium on education that was being given. Schools were clean. Now, of course, it follows the national curriculum, of which I'd like to see a lot of review and improvement, particularly on the technical side. So I feel that her grasp on education is such.
hmm
Secondly, with her hospitals, they're always well funded. Even the assistance to national government agencies that she gives to see that their people are safe through PCR tests. I've heard this on the grapevine, were well documented to me. However, that being said, I gave that opinion because of my gut feel that
hmm
she exudes humility, which is really needed right now. But unless she makes a decision, which probably we
hmm
do not expect until this time,
right.
it falls that way. So
Uh,
right now, in all my interviews and podcasts, I talk about issues,
is
which
she
I think
consulting
people.
you, or is her camp consulting you on plans for 2022? Are you part
I
of?
don't think I don't think she's in that mode right now. I
Not
think
yet. Okay.
everybody's, yeah, all hands. In fairness, everybody who has a local mandate, all
Okay.
hands on deck. I think all hands on deck on dealing with issues on their turf.
Yeah. Again, you know her more than most Filipinos. So what do you think is?
Not really, not really.
No, I mean the
I know
fact
her
that you've
dad.
met her, you've met
Yeah.
her, you've talked to her. I think, which is more than what I've done. But what do you think is keeping her from definitively saying this is what I'll do in 2022, whether it's good to run for the palace or to run for re-election in Davao?
Number one,
What's
she's
with?
an independent person. Maybe she's
Okay,
weighing all options, consulting
okay,
as much as possible. And thirdly, her primary mandate at this time is her constituency,
okay.
of which she must deal with this, particularly with the evolution of the lambda. The
Hmm.
lambda,
Yeah, variant.
vaccination
Yeah.
priorities and uh, like that's why I was talking about mega centers,
Mhm.
like the experience of my compadre Mayor Oca Moreno. You know, you can't stop people from flocking into Cagayan de Oro, no matter how
That's
many
true.
checkpoints you put in. Zamboanga, Cagayan de Oro, Cebu City. I mean, Bacolod, Dumaguete, Iloilo. Uh, so what I envision for the future, Clink, is that these be the hubs that should also invest in common infrastructure with the less fortunate local government units or less resource-laden local government units. So you accept that these are the hubs and you have synergies and economies of scale
Hmm.
so that the other local government units who do not have the capacity, sorry, you know,
Hmm.
can rely on a mega center, and we need to make more of these, even to the point of redesigning our country for the future. That's why I came out with a video, Bagong Pilipinas para sa bagong henerasyon. We
Hmm.
really need to redesign and re-engineer our country as companies do. I
Hmm.
mean, our structure probably is not uh, is not apropos for what
Hmm.
will become of the future as far as we know. But as I know it, if we continue to govern as in the past of the time of Jose Rizal, where we look with nostalgia to the great past, we won't move forward. Now, to
Now,
finance this, we will need
mhm,
to have a lot of realism. No, we
yeah.
will have to open our economy as soon as possible. That means to say, health taking precedence. We'll have to open it, and sadly, it's just like the diaspora of certain people from their home countries. They finance their homeland.
Mhm.
That's what we'll have to do.
So I'm sorry for harping back at this, but so if Mayor Sarah, of course, will make her own decision, but
Sure.
assuming that she stays in Davao, does that mean that you still push ahead with your hopes of making yourself available and contributing somehow to government?
I will. I will. Definitely, I will. But then what that form or shape takes depends
Right.
on consultations with uh, those who are supporting me,
Right.
my political supporters and the private sector supporters. I mean, if they find a voice of reason
Right.
which impels them to tell me to do this or that, fine.
Well, who are reaching out to you? I mean, of course, we've heard
I'd
of
like
Senator Lacson for making a list.
I think they have not
Okay,
because these are established politicians already. I
okay.
think not, and there are some others who are reaching out, but I do not know the parameters of this yet, because I have stated a point of view in so far as a position is concerned, and then they know I stick to my word when it comes from that to that. No.
Right. So, assuming again, continuing, if Sarah doesn't run for president, what would be the most desirable, I suppose, characteristics that you would look for in leaders that you would support in 2022?
What is a
You
vision
mentioned
for the future?
competence. Yeah.
No, it has to be a long-term vision for the future of the country.
Okay.
And I'd like to see, number two, a long-term healthcare response plan.
Okay.
And number three, what is going to be done about digital hardening and security?
Okay.
Number four, since we need a lot of interaction with the world community at large, what is the foreign policy of this leader or these leaders? Number five, what are the macroeconomic policies of this leader? And number six, the educational policy of the leader. I mean, it's easy to promise a college graduate jobs, but what kind of jobs are you going to give him? A job befitting the degree, or are we going to have an underemployed economy once again?
So are you looking at other people? I mean, who's on your radar? I mean, who would qualify?
I don't think there's anybody on the radar, and I wouldn't want to put anybody who's qualified on the radar for that. I haven't heard anything specific from anyone.
Okay, but isn't that disappointing though that there are very few standouts? I mean, isn't it sad that we can't think of more than just one person who may do a good job as president or as leaders? Is that something that we should be concerned
why
of?
it no to me? I think of
Okay.
it one rung lower.
Okay.
It's disappointing because we rely so much on elected people to run the country.
Okay.
And this is why I go back again to the need to reinforce the bureaucracy.
Okay.
So that you have a core, a spinal cord holding your country together. And in your limbs, which are your local government units, you also have a well-trained and well-motivated bureaucracy. It takes time to build it again, but you got to start.
You mentioned earlier that you may be looking at vision and the foreign policy positions of people who are running. Can I ask you to put on your former DND hat on and just give us an assessment of our security situation as you see it from your viewpoint?
Well, our security situation, let's put it both internal and external.
Okay.
On the external, we are embarking on an ambitious military capability upgrade.
Okay.
Which is ongoing, and it costs a lot of money. And people have to realize that that is a sunk cost. Because what Afghanistan proves is that you cannot rely on anybody else but yourself. At best, you can rely on help through alliances, through joint exercises, through grants and aid, but it is a sunk cost which must be borne by our people. And the doctrine of military realism practiced just like Afghanistan proves, if you don't have the might, you'll not be taken seriously. And I do not mean offensive capability, but I mean the ability to mount a credible defense. Secondly, and this is also prevalent in the private sector, as you know, digital hardening, digital infrastructure security is equally important in that. So for our external defense, we are ongoing an ambitious capability upgrade plan, of course, derailed by the need for COVID funds and social service funds. But that has begun. on the internal security front, I see improvements against both the NPA, and a more important thing is that there is no widespread conflict in Central Mindanao,
Okay.
which has been solved through the BARM. And the MILF is now with the government, absent some BIFF elements,
Sure.
which a lot of the conflicts are started by Rido or
Right.
internecine feuds between
Yeah.
and amongst leaders. And that is a big positive contribution to our internal security. However, that being said, there is still a presence of the Abu Sayyaf in the southwestern part of Mindanao, which needs to be actively monitored, particularly now. Terrorism will always be there. It can also be rightist terrorism. It can be fanatics of
Fundamentalist,
of whatever ilk, I mean, like in the United States, there's a different form of terrorism too, no? However, this Afghanistan incident also bears watching because it may embolden some other groups to take advantage of the situation, or embolden groups to continue what they were doing before.
Yeah.
So internally, I think there's a big improvement. Externally, we are, as much as we can, doing the best in order to create that credible deterrent. However, in digital infrastructure, which costs a lot of money and it changes day to day, I think we have to have a system of innovation where we must be ahead of the curve and not just invest in technologies after they come out.
Right. My colleagues are messaging me. They want to ask you questions, but let me just ask you a couple of more before I allow the other reporters to ask. On foreign policy, how do you think the Philippines should balance the relationship between China and the U.S. Given what's going on with the West Philippine
To me,
Sea?
the simple answer is the
Okay.
U.S. is our treaty ally in mutual defense. We work well with them. China really has some China really has a conflict with the Philippines insofar as the West Philippine Sea issue is concerned, and international law is our ally on that. Nevertheless, even the US recognizes that there is need to engage with China as a big trading partner and economic partner. So, to me, the West Philippine Sea issue, as I have said before, and people say it's a cop-out, but I'm sorry, it's not a cop-out. It's a diplomatic and national security issue. It is not a partisan political issue. And it must be handled with expertise and deftness. And it must be handled with one goal in mind. The best interest of the Philippines. For example, Vietnam and Malaysia, they have already identified the boundaries of their exclusive economic zones in the South China Sea. The Philippines is not included in that, although they, out of courtesy, marked out a line. Why? Because we cannot work with Malaysia on a boundary because there is a pending issue too with Malaysia.
Right.
So within and amongst us regionally, vis-a-vis a giant somewhere else, we got to get our acts together somewhere here.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have your cake and eat it too, So it's a complex diplomatic issue, which cannot be helped by fanning expectations or simplistic realisms on people without knowing the full extent of the issues involved.
Yeah, so how would you suggest that we deal with China? And given the dynamic between, of course, the hawks and the doves, I mean, there are always the of course the PLA perhaps, or the military establishment in China looking for a more aggressive position, and the
Yeah.
diplomats perhaps looking for a more um, um, diplomatic position. How should we approach that important neighbor of ours?
Well, on the West Philippine Sea issue, there's no compromise there. The president
Okay.
has said that already.
Okay.
Now, if they're able to work around, with that, then we can proceed to other issues. Though. For example, I just had learned that under the arbitral tribunal ruling or under UNCLOS, militarization or island building is not prohibited. No. What
Okay.
China violated in building that artificial structure was a treaty on the protection of the environment and the
Okay.
destruction of the coral reefs and maritime life, no? But island building per se, if you do not violate, or militarization per se, assuming it's within your territory, it's not a violation per se.
Dempsey, our defense reporter, wants to ask something. Dempsey, can I ask you to turn on your camera and ask, please?
Sir, you mentioned about the external and internal defense, no? Sa external, sir, you mentioned that I mean you mentioned about the West Philippine Sea, the South China Sea, sir. I will ask you, sir, are you somehow satisfied with how our DND is handling
Oh, I'm
the issue on the South China Sea? I mean, are you satisfied? That's my first question, sir. Parang, are you satisfied
Dempsey,
with how
no?
they...
Dalawa ang aking sagot dyan, ano? Both the DFA and the DND speak in concord and in tandem. And within our capabilities, I'm satisfied.
Okay. But with how they are handling it, sir, kasi apparently sometimes obviously they are negating with one another, or they are sometimes negating with what the president is saying.
But
So
they are doing what they Secretary Lorenzana said that I heard in an interview that he works in concord with Secretary Locsin in asserting what we can do through Coast Guard, through DOTC also, no? It's a tripartite engagement through Coast Guard and through military means. Secretary Lorenzana has been uncompromising when it comes to the West Philippine Sea. And the capability upgrade is so far ongoing to create a credible deterrent to that. So within our resources, I consider him lucky because with the resources available to him and to me during our time, I can't but say that I'm satisfied.
Siguro, sir, last na lang on the external defense issue. In terms of sir, siguro, sir, yung parang the stand, sir, kasi some are saying that the president's position is softened, especially when it comes to West Philippine Sea, but nag-change siya from time to time din. Minsan may matapang na statements, minsan hindi. In terms of siguro, sir, I would like to ask you on the stance of the current administration, sir. Do you think that they should be more stronger when it comes to addressing the issue?
I wouldn't let me talk about the defense and no, even Secretary Lorenzana described the president's stand as diplomatis on his form of diplomatis, no. However, the mission of the AFP remains consistent and constant and has not changed at all. And the mission of the DND actually. What we do not appreciate also are the inputs of the department proper and other agencies like the NSA, and the Coast Guard to go into this. The mission profile remains the same. The tempo remains the same. So in that sense, I can only suppose that there is some coordination within that context. And Secretary Locsin has also actually been very, very vociferous regarding the West Philippine Sea issue.
Okay. Last na lang ulit, sir.
Oh,
on the internal security, na-mention niya, sir, that the Abu Sayyaf should be closely monitored, and apparently our military, our security sector has been completely focused on communist insurgency. And
actually not. Marami tayong actually I think that it's not totally focused on that, because in Central Mindanao that is not totally the issue also, no. Terrorism is also the issue. So with what I'm saying is, with the Afghanistan situation, this bears watching, but the threat is not as imminent as that of damage to, specifically when HADR is concerned. Sino bang may history na nag-ambush ng military vehicles na nagdadala ng relief goods at supplies sa isang lugar? Hindi naman Abu Sayyaf eh.
Kathy, you want to ask your questions?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Secretary. Sir, if ever na tumakbo kayo, meron na po ba mga possible national parties na gusto niyo pong takbuhan, or independent party lang po kayo if ever?
Of course, mas maganda yung may partido kung may mag-a-adapt or whatnot. Pero sa ngayon, independent pa rin ako kasi gusto ko independyente yung isip ko eh.
Opo. So far yun lang, sir. Mga natanong na po kanina yung about kay Mayor Sara. So far, wala pa rin naman pong update kay Mayor kung gusto niyo pa rin tumakbo eh. So thank you
Wala
po.
ba kayong,
at sa tingin ko naman, realistically, lahat ng local officials ngayon nakatutok talaga naman sa problema sa mga lugar nila.
Pero wala ba kayong nalalapit na meeting or I don't know,
sa ngayon wala. Sa ngayon wala. That's not on the agenda. Probably pag medyo lumumanay ang sitwasyon, magkakaroon. Pero sa ngayon, wala. I don't think also it would be proper to do that.
Sec, do you mind if I ask you some follow-up questions lang dun sa...
Sure.
You mentioned the need for yung stronger defense on cybersecurity.
Oh yeah.
Because many people think, and this is born out of my discussion with members from the banking association, they seem to be focused on the individual hacker. But what's happening now is, you see governments like, reportedly North Korea with Bureau 121, organizing. How should we prepare? Yeah.
You can only prepare in two ways. Number one, have the right kind of the most important really is your system, and more important than the system are the people who run the system, because hacking and the fight against hacking is a day-to-day, minute-by-minute battle. It's really like a gamer. It's really like a gamer thing, and you really have to be vigilant. That's why the most important element in the hacking chain actually are your people running the system and monitoring the variables you put into your tracking in order to determine whether there is a hack or there's some suspicious thing. And we must know also that a massive education campaign is needed because of the growth of e-commerce in our country. Massive education must be needed because the weakest link in the hacking chain is the user.
Right.
Because let's say, oy, nanalo ka ng 5,000 pesos mula sa ganon. Please give me your account. Goodbye, the whole system. No matter how many billions of pesos you spend on the system, kompromisado na yan.
Right. So was this, a program, cybersecurity, a program of DND when you were there, or
No, actually, we don't have a budget for that at that time.
Oh my goodness! Okay.
It was only a private sector system. You remember during that time there was no broadband backbone for the national government at that time. We were just using off-the-shelf servers and off-the-shelf services.
Wow.
It wasn't as sophisticated at that time. There were no fiber optics yet at that time, actually.
I think the gist of his question was yung internal security. Could you maybe expound on that, Sekibo?
No, I think even during my time, I can understand. No? Before I left, there was a directive to make the NPA irrelevant by 2010, no?
Mm-hmm.
To coincide with President Arroyo's end of term. I realized the need for balance in especially the approach to the internal security methods. No? However, there are gains that we cannot deny that were made, and there was a weakening of the NPA. Now, in so far as probably the imbalance, the questions arising out of certain funds going to this or that agency, they will have to account for this at the end of the day. And a vigilant COA is the most important element of this. No?
Dempsey, I think has another question to ask. Humihilig si Dempsey ng follow-up eh. Go ahead, Dempsey.
Apo, question lang sir, yung sa yung ayun na sir, as I was saying dun sa, kasi ang dami nagsasabi sir na parang bakit parang mas priority daw yung sa NTF-ELCAC. Siguro sir, tanongin ko lang din sa NTF-ELCAC sir, satisfied din ba kayo sa ginagawa nila sir? I mean, amid the issues ng red tagging?
Hindi ko gaanong alam yung trabaho ng NTF-ELCAC, no? Nung araw sa OPAC yun at saka DSWD yung aming joint localized peace and order councils, LPOC yung amin nung araw. Kasi given the fact that we know that a lot, kasi hindi pa na-stabilize yung Central Mindanao noon. MILF meron pa rin hindi pa rin sila nakaanib, no? Sa gobyerno, hindi ba sila nagsababa armas? Because naalala mo, after na binigyan ng TRO ng Supreme Court yung MOA AD, nagkaputukan dun sa Central Mindanao, nagkaroon tayo ng IDPs, lahat. At that time, ginawa na lang na Local Peace and Order Councils, LPO. And it became very, very successful kasi alam naman natin ang cause ng insurgency sa maraming lugar dito ay localized, except dun sa NPA kasi ginagamit nila yung ideology as a shield for political power. And without joining our constitutional processes.
Okay.
Ngayon, yun walang justification talaga kasi wala naman reason na hindi sila umanib na magsibaba armas na umanib sa gobyerno, no? Actually, after the repeal of Republic Act 1700, by President Ramos, the Communist Party of the Philippines per se is legal. The problem is if they wittingly or unwittingly contribute funds and other aid and comfort to an armed group, which is akin to a politician forming his or her own private armed group. Parehong kalaban ng bansa yan. Now, I do not have enough information na ma-rate yung trabaho ng NTF LCAC and sa ano ng pondo, malalaman natin sa effectivity nito. Ang alam ko because I've been working with indigenous people's communities sa South Cotabato as partners an FPIC for a commercial concern, and they've been very effective doon sa IPs kasi hindi talaga, the IPs are empowered. Hindi sila kailangan giyahan o protektahan ng ano because they're empowered in themselves, no? So effective doon. Ayaw ko lang sa ibang lugar. I don't have that information because I'm not in government.
I mean, sige sir, given that, regarding dun sa, I mean, I think it's an issue din yung sa red tagging, especially concerned yung military natin dito and of course the DND. Do you think that the government, particularly our military, should tone down with its so-called red tagging?
You know what? If they have the evidence, to do so, they must file the case in court and say so.
Then resorting to red tagging, sir.
Kung may ebidensya na, file na nila.
File na lang nila. I mean, sir, do you think that they should,
I mean,
rather
let's
than
say,
resorting?
you know what? Ang tagging someone o ano, it's freedom of speech. Ang problema lang kung may nangyayaring masama pagkatapos nun. At yun ang dapat maiwasan. No?
Okay.
But you don't need a law against that. May mga
Yes.
batas para dyan.
So parang sir, you're saying that it's okay to tag someone because I mean it's not illegal per se, as long as that person should not feel threatened or be
Naturally. Pati ako naman, hindi ba tinag nung araw, pasista, diktador, o whatnot. Hindi ba? Pumunta ka lang sa DND secretary ka, pumunta ka sa kung anong universidad nung araw dito sa Manila, may pasista, diktador, berdugo.
Kasi sir parang 'di ba, I mean he's already retired, si General Parlade. Parang he was involved in so many controversies. I mean involving the DPC as well. He red tagged the DPC once. And ayun lang sir, parang siguro, do you have any advice to our, I mean as their former SND?
Si June is a dedicated officer. At he really believes in what he did at nakakita na rin siya ng maraming namatayan na mga kasama niya. So, fervor niya sa bansa niya, yan. So perhaps, ngayon na civilian na si June, pagpapatuloy niya ang kanyang advocacy, pero malalaman din niya na how to tweak or nuance his approach, no? Nung araw, nakasuot na uniform yan. Meron sworn duty yan.
Okay, are you concerned na this coming election, of course, given the fact that the NPA still controls some pocket territories that, you know, mabubuhayan na naman sila ulit na
Hindi.
You know, extortion.
Hindi ako concerned doon. You know why? Because right now, the concern actually, if you're talking about an election, is not the NPA, the control or the whatnot. It's how will you campaign? How will you vote? How will you register? I mean, those are the three more important issues rather than NPA control over areas.
And so, what are you spending time on these days? I mean, are you consulting with people?
I am. I am.
And maybe what can you share with us?
I'm consulting with people. I'm holding town hall conferences as safe as possible with different sectors, radio and TV interviews like you. And of course, I have my private sector responsibilities, which take a lot of
Sure.
time too. Being, you know why? Because being independent director of certain publicly listed companies, you have to chair certain committees which are scrutinized very
Right.
heavily by the regulators. No, but then again, as I try to outreach as much as possible. As a matter of fact, I've had a very interesting town hall discussion last week, where with various sectors of society, where I learned, the plight of single parents, elderly, OFWs, who are waiting to be repatriated, and we have to be realistic that we cannot accommodate everybody here. And controversially, though, you may want to ask the experts who I've talked to. I won't name them, but there are a lot of demographic and population experts here that as subsidence sets in, as natural phenomena come in the ring of fire, habitable areas become smaller.
Yeah.
And our population really is at the tip of its carrying capacity.
Have you-
So the
Have you-
issue of that is really a pressing issue.
Last question na lang, Sec. Have you talked to President Duterte about any of your plans? Have you consulted him about what you may or may not do?
No, but I look forward to that opportunity also to have a talk with him. Yeah.
I see. Sec, maybe if some of those town hall meetings are open to media, please let us know, because we'd like to stay in touch with you. Maybe also to hear what are concerns being shared with you. And of course, we're very interested in what you will decide to do. Meron ba kayong deadline on yourself when you may or may not make a decision?
No, right now, no. I don't think there's a deadline right now. I don't think anybody has. People set deadlines before only to extend them. But this is the gist,
Yeah.
The series of videos I came out on was Bagong Pilipinas para sa bagong henerasyon. We really need to create a new country, and not just a new set of people, not just a new set of policies, new set of laws, but you really need to create a new organism. Because maybe this organism that survives nowadays is not the organism that we need for the future. And the beneficiaries would be the new generation. But to get that, we need to learn as much as possible as what they view in life. For example, like us in U2 Clink, in institutional enterprises, have a hard time attracting talent for the long run. No, I think there is an impatience now. Like I was impatient. I'm guilty of that. I only practiced straight law for about 4 or 5 years. I got too impatient. What more young people now with a lot of knowledge at their fingertips. So it's kind of hard also to get people that need a long pathway to training, to expertise, to get them to sit in one chair for a long time, and the wait might be too long. No. So those are some of the challenges, and we have to know what their psyches are so that we can do our best at this time, because we have responsibility for them at this time, no, in order to see them through their vision of what the future is. Even their parents, why are they working? I've been asked, why will a tricycle driver or somebody who just has tomorrow to think about things, I answer them saying that, why are you thinking about tomorrow? It's not just to eat, but it's because you love somebody and you want to make the best of it, you know. So so sometimes, you know, what's your dream? I don't use the word dream. I use the word pangarap because dream might be something unreachable, but pangarap meaning, say, I don't know the exact English
Aspiration,
term.
I hope. Yep.
Aspirations. Thanks for the input. The aspirations, no, for the future, so we can really craft a new Philippines. I think it's like the Elon Musk approach to a new Philippines. No, you need a little of that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, Secretary Teodoro, and if you don't mind, maybe we can reach out to you from time to time if there are developments
Please
on the
do.
political sphere, and maybe if there are some, you know, security issues that come up in the future. If you don't mind, maybe we can ask you to weigh in on some of those if you feel comfortable. But
Of course.
for now, are there any final thoughts that maybe other issues you want to leave us with? Maybe we haven't asked a question that you'd like to discuss, or.
No, I think the outlines of what I'd like to discuss have been already taken up. What I can only wish each and every one of you here now, and to all the Manila Times patrons, I being one of them,
Thank you.
the best of health, and I hope everybody keeps safe.
Well, Secretary Teodoro,
And I wish
thank
you'd
you
had
very much.
a really difficult. I wish you'd put on a really difficult crossword also every day.
We'll work on that. Sec Gibo.
Syndicate the one of
New York Times.
yeah. That's one thing my father left to me. He would do it as much as he could every day.
Sige, Gibo, we'll look into that. Medyo mahal, but just for you, we'll look into it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. Bye.